Hey, my name is Anthony Carroll and welcome to Diamond Woodworks. So today we're going to be building out a dust collection cart. So again, like I said in a previous video, I want something that offers me the most utility out of its relative square footage. So looking around on YouTube, I think I want to try to build something akin to April Wilkerson's dust collection cart, so I'll link that below. I think that's going to be the best bang for the buck. Alright, to start things off, we're just ripping down some plywood. So this is just 3/4 inch plywood. I designed this entire cart so it only takes up one sheet of plywood. It runs, I think, like $55–$60 or so at my local Home Depot. Prices may vary, obviously. To rip it down, I'm just using a simple circular saw track. I don't have a fancy track saw, but this lets me get a straight cut. It's pretty accurate. It's just, you have to keep constant pressure on it and it's not locked into place. So if you input any kind of movement, then, obviously you'll have error in your cut. Now that everything's been cut down to almost its final size using the circular saw, I'm just ripping the remaining factory edges off on the table saw and getting everything cut down to its final size. Alright, so we almost have all of our pieces cut out. The last thing we need to do is make a hole for the bucket to sit down in on the top shelf there. So we need to find the diameter of the bucket where we want it to sit. I want the bucket to rest right here on this lip that's built in, so you can easily measure something that's circular by getting its circumference and dividing it by pi. So it came out to be 11.53 inches, so 11.5 inches. Transferring your measurements pretty easy. You just mark the center point where you actually want your hole to start. You take a string that is half of that distance, so in my case 11.5 inches would be 5 3/4. Fix that string into the center, and then on the other end just draw a circle using a pen or a pencil, and just keep the string tight all the way across, and then just cut it out with a jigsaw. I left about a 3-inch space up front. I wouldn't leave any more than that if you're using the Dustopper. Alright, let's see how we did. Moved everything down to the floor so it'd be a little bit easier to manage. Threw a bead of glue on it, and then I'm using some clamps there that you can see at the bottom just to hold everything kind of upright, so it'll allow me to work on it. Once I got everything kind of in place, I take a speed square and a few clamps here and throw it into the corner just to help keep everything square. So once that side is set, I throw one on the front, one on the back, come back through with my brad nailer, throw a couple brads in it, just to really hold it until the glue can dry. Now that the brads are holding everything together, I'm coming back through and throwing some little trim head finish screws into it, and that will be the main structure, well, that and the glue. Alright, so I flipped it up onto its top and I'm throwing the bottom on. I threw a bead of glue down, getting everything lined up. Then once that's good and set, I come back through and again throw some brads in there to temporarily hold it while I come back through and throw some actual screws in it. I'm just using my speed square there just to give me a straight line across the back, that way I don't shoot through the plywood.
When it comes to mobility, we're just using some 2-inch casters I picked up from Harbor Freight for a few dollars a piece, secured in there with some 3/4 inch Phillips head screws. Hindsight being what it is, I would probably step it up to a 3-inch caster just to let it, tackle some of the little bumps and that kind of stuff a little bit better. Now, granted, I don't want it to lock. I want to be able to drag it around with me. And here comes the arbitrary roll around. Yep, the wheels do actually roll. So now that we've established that wheels do in fact roll, we're installing that shelf that the bucket actually sits on, or sits into rather. Using just a couple speed squares sewn onto the sides, measured down a common distance from the top, just to give it a surface for that shelf to actually sit on while secure it in place. When you're establishing the height of a shelf, don't forget to hook up your hose just to make sure you have enough slack. That way everything actually fits in nicely. So before I mount the shelf, I want to test fit everything and then lay out the actual shop vac accessories in the orientation that I kind of think I want them to be at. And I'll just draw a quick reference line so I can move it over to the little makeshift work table there and kind of refine it from there. So I ended up taking and drawing the exterior of the actual attachment and then the interior, and then just splitting the difference. Now I can take more material away as needed. My shop vac accessories had like a little a latch system that I had to notch out as well. Just be careful, you can always cut more. It's a lot harder to add wood back though. All my holes are cut, everything fits well, so let's mount the shelf. This goes in pretty similar to everything else. We throw a bead of glue on it, and then we come through with some brads, followed up with screws. So the last main thing that we're using the plywood for is to build a little shelf in the back here to hold sandpaper and some miscellaneous stuff. So you see me cutting a dado here for some little 1/8 inch thick material that I have. Do a quick test fit, bump the saw over, and then run a dado through. Now granted, if I would have done this the smart way, instead of bumping the actual fence over to make my second pass, I would have just used the scrap piece in the background there, up against the fence, ran it through, removed it, cut my second slot, or my second dado, and it would have been a perfect fit. But hey, you learn something new every day. Since this thing's not going to really hold any weight, I'm not going to come back with the screws. I'm just simply throwing a bead of glue down. You see I switched over to Tight Bond. I was trying to use that Gorilla Glue just because, you know, I had maybe a quarter bottle left or so, but it's been sitting forever and it's just got too thick to squeeze out. And finally just got tired of fighting with it. So just throw a bead of glue down, throw a few brads in it, and then it's good to go. Moving back to the table saw, we're just cutting out the actual dividers for the dados that we just made. Ripping this down to size, and then I'll come through and cross-cut the actual dividers. I'm using this to store 5-inch sanding discs, so the dividers are going to get cut at about 5¼ inch. That way, by the time it sits in the dado, you know, you can fit your sanding blocks in there without having to kind of squeeze them in. Alright, so starting off with the cross cuts, I'll set up a little sacrificial piece here just to give me some standoff between the fence and the actual offcut. If you don't do this, you know, you run the risk of getting kicked back because it'll bind against the blade and then get frisbeed back towards you. In hindsight, I'd probably use something a little bit thicker because this only gave me about 1/4 inch of play. It worked out, nothing shot back at me, thankfully. Alright, show and tell time. So, everything works out well. You can see the hose has plenty of slack in it from the shop vac to the Dustopper. I made a little 3/4 inch really speed bump just to keep the shop vac from rolling off in case, you know, it hits one of the cracks in the garage floor or something of that nature. I threw a couple magnetic strips on this just to hold some stuff that I'm working on. I tend to always set stuff down, forget where I put it, so hopefully this will help solve some of that. On the back panel here, I plan on adding some French cleats later on, just to give myself some utility. I made a quick little holder for my cord there, and instead of cutting dados on the back panel, I just cut some of those little 1/4 inch slats, and that works out just fine. Now moving around to this side, some spring clamps just tossed up top, and another magnetic storage, or a magnetic strip there.
Overall, I'm happy with the cart. It doesn't take up really any more space than just these two items sitting side by side, and it's a lot easier to use. The easier your dust collection is to use, the more likely you are to use it, and the less dust that you're actually breathing in. So once I get everything mounted and get this thing fixed up and finalized, I think it'll be really handy. I really just enjoyed getting out there and just building something. It's been a while since I've built anything, so just getting back at it and, you know, kind of getting my hands dirty, you know, it was great. And, you know, I learned something, and every time you can build something and learn from it and apply that to your projects going forward, it's going to come in handy. Alright, so if you liked the video, smash that subscribe button. Thanks.